Welcome to the Tools and Track low-cost Christmas special. What makes it so different from a normal episode? Nothing. It's just the same old shit, except now we put jingle bells all the way through it. I'm not putting jingle bells all the way through it, don't worry. Right, this is episode 30 of the low-cost build. 30. It's been a few, so I'm going to make the bold claim and stamp this as the halfway point of this project, which means you've got another 30 to go, which is pretty grim. But yeah, let's get the finger out. Welcome to the lesser used selfie cam, but I thought seeing as how we are 30 episodes in, let's have a walk through it and see what we've actually managed to achieve for what is a halfway point. As you can see, there is a rolling chassis, so that is at least progress. What we managed to do with this rolling chassis though, we've got, well, one seat in, so definitely on the to-do list. We need to sort out the second one for that. I'll be honest, there's going to be a reason why I've not really pushed that much further forward, and we'll get to that in due course of time. We do also have suspension on the rear and a diff in the rear. We've also got a prop shaft mating that to the gearbox, which is also in the car. In this episode, I'm going to pull this off and get it sent away to get properly balanced though. Again, project creep, which just kind of snuck away from me and I'm not really bothered with it. Well, not anymore. Moving up, we've also got the steering column and the steering rack in the front. That has been a bit of a mission, and I'm not going to lie, since getting it in, I've also ignored it. So in this episode, we're going to look at what really needs to kind of start going in around this area too, which is exciting. Then, hidden by a nose cone, which in the last episode we managed to get fitted and properly mounted, we've got the engine. That's also in as well. Albeit, we've not done any form of plumbing, wiring or anything else. It just sits there. Sadly enough, that also means it's going to have to come back out again soon so we can properly weld up those engine mounts. On the subject of welding, you'll notice that the sides are still pretty barren. Believe it or not, I've missed out a lot of structural stuff on here because in my mind I had a wild plan to solve this. Again, I've not bothered my arse getting around to it. And then at the front, as I said, we've got a steering rack, we've also got suspension on. But we've not welded it up, so it's not permanent yet. Yes, we're definitely halfway through this project. I'm trying to work out all these stupid little problems that I've had and went, I'll come back to that later and actually address them in this episode. One of which, as has been lying about, and a few up until now, is the pedal box. My pedal box was fabricated to live on the other side of these posts. As you can see, you've got a notch here that would catch this bar. This plate here would go against the back of these plates, and the whole lot would be fairly rigid. However, now I've put the engine in, I have found that we have a fouling issue. Namely, this guy here fouls on the very slave cylinder that it's meant to act on. And I've left this out and did the whole have a think about it every time I walk by it, and I've not found anything really obvious until now. So I think what's going to happen is, we mount this forward an inch and put another bar in below it, our clearance issues go away. So that might be the solution that we're looking for. Just to be absolutely certain, I'm going to remove everything that I know I can refabricate off of the engine to give me the clearance that I might need. Stuff like this, which is the hard line that originally went to the clutch master cylinder, which won't make any sense anyway, because we're going to change it all. So let's strip everything away and just identify the problem. Right, that's the nose going on. I'm just going to give this a nip up because we're actually going to start formulating the rest of the body panels, culminating in the scuttle at this point. What we're going to do here is very rough fit all of the things that we will need to determine where the scuttle can live. That might seem like an odd thing to do, just completely bypass the bonnet, but we know we're going to have to do major surgery because of this guy, so let's just carry on and make sure our lengths match. So, bonnet. There we go. That's the bonnet more or less positioned where it's going to live once it's on the car. Now, our scuttle can go from this point onwards. So let's dig one out. Here's our scuttle panel. There's a lot of things already in the way that I know I'm going to have to cut around this scuttle panel so that it will fit flush. But what I now have with the bonnet on is a reference point, so I know where the scuttle can actually be placed so we can do a final fitting. For this, I'll need a pen. With that marked on each side, move the bonnet forward and start looking at how this goes on. So my biggest headache is going to be around the other side. As we've known for quite a while, My homebrew bracket that holds on the steering shaft assembly is totally not compliant with this guy. So what I'm going to do is roughly line up where it's going to sit, which is here, and I'm going to mark out what needs to be cut out for it to clear that part, which is this part. Time for an angle grinder. Well, the good news is that now fits nice and flush. The bad news, I suspect, will be, these are significantly narrower cars than mine. So what have we learned here? Well, Westfield SE is the narrowest Westfield I think they make, and this book plan was the narrowest book plan I could find because I was being a hero and expecting to be really, really skinny. But what is actually the case is the Westfield is significantly narrower than this book plan. So we're probably going to struggle a bit if we use these. So I've got a number of options. We can give up and use something else, which is probably going to be the end result anyway. So if we're going to be going that route as an end result, if we bastardise these to make them half work, it's going to make a difference anyway because they're going in the bin. How do I widen this? I've not had a lot of success with fiberglass in the past, and I strongly suspect I'm still not going to have much today. But what I have learned about making things wider and changing them is you've got to distract from the most obvious point, which is don't just chop it in half and stretch it because it's going to look really obvious. I am going to cut this here, and I'm going to cut it here, and I'm going to put two joins in it so that at least I've got the strength of the middle and the strength of the two outsides. I'm just adding a bridge. If we just chop it here, there's an obvious sag and a very, very obvious seam line right down the middle. I'm not saying that's not going to be the case for this guy, by the way. We'll come to that because that's tomorrow's problem. But to get this scuttle on, I think that's going to be the way we do it. F it, we'll just chop it anyway. Let's just see how big a gap we're going to actually need with this guy. 3 inches is a lot, man. How did these plans vary just so wildly? So 87, which is 25, 50, 75, so just over 3 inches. But now we'll go. That was my plan. Where do we go from here? This would be useful. I'm the actual engineers for solution, but never mind. Very curvular, isn't it? Yeah, do that. I should stipulate, by the way, that this is a temporary structure for me to glass fibre things. There's no way that I'm making Colin Chapman spin like a turbocharger in his grave by adding this much lightness deletion. Very, very easy for me at this point to just go, well, there's some holes there, bolt it up and away we go. But as we have noted, there's a curve to this. And if I was to do that, there's going to be a noticeable indent on that curve. So, what we're going to have to do first is make sure we get the top one in before we put any of this structure attached to it. So, yeah, top bit. Here we have my homebrew jig. Who doesn't love a jig? This is just 2 lengths of angle iron. Now I've mocked this up on the car, made sure all of my alignment is as good as possible, and then bolted all this up to give it a bit of rigidity. Now we've taken it off the car, we've gently placed it down, and I'm just going to first coat very, very roughly, but you know, hopefully correctly, put some strength back in this with glass fibre. Once we've done that, we can start building it up and look to blend, but for the moment, add strength. Add strength. So what we're going to do is pre-mix up some glass fibre resin. using this, which is 2-part. You'll remember this from TVR days when we had to do a repair on that, because I may have dropped my body on the TVR by mistake. Annoyingly, it's also the height of winter right now, so this is going to be an overnighter just till it cured. But what we'll do is we'll get some fibre strand out and pre-cut, so that when we put it on, it's just on, and that's it. I mean, it seems solid enough, but I think we're going to need many more layers, which means, well, that's bare. I've not put enough bloody resin on it, that's the problem. It's just a wee bit too dry. Right, okay, so I've had a wee think about this, and the long and the short of it is it ain't getting done in this episode, because I'd quite like to give you an update this year, and this is going to take a long time. So plan B is plan A. Remember how I was talking about the pedal box and then got completely distracted with this? Pedal box. Right, I'm not having a lot of luck here. As you can see, the master cylinder and the slave cylinder really want to be good friends, as in they want to be inside each other. So I've tried it with this guy, the space that I made up in the pedal box episode, and it's just an absolute no-go. There's no chance I can even get it in with that. I tried deleting it and bringing the master cylinder further in. Unfortunately, that doesn't really give us any solutions either. My big issue is that the hose out from the master cylinder, where it would feed to whatever flexi line makes it to the sleeve, basically goes right into the bell housing. As you can see here, the long and the short is I don't think this is going to work. I'm going to have to think of another solution, which means a trip to eBay. Which brings me to this. This is a Land Rover unit. You'll notice it's more or less dimensionally the same. Well, I say that, it actually protrudes even further out, so we'll see how we go on with that. But interestingly enough, it looks like the holes that were originally drilled in this might actually mate up to that, so that's useful. Also, we've got an integral plunger here, so that might work, and it might not, who knows. But crucially, the feed for the hose that goes from the master to the slave points up the way, i.e. nowhere near the engine. Let's see if this will work. Mixed bag of emotions. Obviously, ultra pumped that has literally plug and play fitted, and it was a total guess. I just looked at it on eBay and went, that'll do. I'm probably going to have to modify the box, but at least it'll fit. No, it bolts clean on, and it was pre-drilled on the pedal box plate for it to go in. Going to have to trim down the shaft actuating on here, because I've had to squeeze it in a wee bit just to get the cleavage pin in, so we'll trim that back. But even the thread for it, which, you know, Land Rover's always Imperial stuff. Nah man, thread straight into an MX-5 Union, so go figure. I wish I'd known that to begin with, because I wouldn't have bothered modifying it and drilling it and doing all the rest of the stuff, but doesn't matter, it works. Right, pedal box is in, now we need to make this a bit more permanent. Now you'll notice up here on the top that I've got a line of pre-drilled holes. Now those holes aren't just for decoration, they are going to mount to a plate that's going to have to go across the top, because when we're pushing here, if I take this off to demonstrate, it's going to have forces acting that way. So we're going to have to mate it up, so that when we're pushing the pedals, it doesn't move. Now I've held off doing this because, well, I was worried there's going to have to be left, right, up, down and all sorts of other stuff going on. Now I know there isn't, because that clutch master cylinder is sitting where it should be. So, time to do a bit more chassis welding. While we're at it as well, all of this stuff still needs strengthening, so might as well chuck some of that in as well while we're at it. Remember this guy? Well, that's good. The pedals now will work and have resistance and seem to be doing what they should do. So, I've got a number of choices of what I can do now, but bearing in mind that we've just finished the pedal box, I have had a whole load of open area sitting here to get access to this easily, namely no gussets. So, let's get some gussets thrown in here, so I don't need to bugger about with it anymore. And I need to try and get rid of the seat again. Right, well, we're gusseted now, so it's getting a bit chilly. This is probably a good time to wrap up. But before we do, there's no list. So, exhaust and alternator are two things that are still sitting outstanding that for some reason I conjured up as being a good idea to start. Well, we're at the halfway point now, so it's time to start making some proper objectives. Oh, operation first start. Everything we're going to do from here on in is going to take us to a point where this engine is going to fire up in this new car that we've built. So let's consider some of the things that we're going to have to do. Now the engine and gearbox and everything else is sitting in, so that's fine. We've got the prop out, so that's going to go away and get balanced. But what else do we need to actually get this thing to make a song? Well, yeah, the original list. We need an alternator in. That, yes, we established. I'll get onto that pretty soon, promise. We also need to consider something else. Coolant. That, I'll grant you, we have started by putting the radiator in, but there's going to be the lines and everything else we need to do to deal with that, because whilst it will fire up without it all, I'd like to run it for more than 20 seconds. Also, fuel. We're going to have to think about fueling, because it's not going to run in fresh air, despite my best hopes for that. So we're going to have to think about some form of fuel receptacle in the back, and all the lines to allow that to happen. Yes, the other thing that was on the list, the exhaust. We will need to make something, if not permanent, that will at least stop it firing flames into my feet when we fire it up. Also, something else. Electrics, namely what's left of the loom, made to look a bit neater. We also will need to get the stock firing up, everything else, ECU, a battery somewhere, may as well put it where it's going to have to live, and everything else. So yes, Operation First Start will have a few things to address. So, we'll get all this sorted out in coming episodes, so now you've got something to look forward to. And amongst all that, we're also going to have to start addressing the bodywork. Now, yes, granted, we've started on the scuttle, but there's clearly going to be a whole lot of other stuff, because what have we learned so far, guys? These book plans do not mate to a Westfield's body system. So, yes, the sizes are all off, and there's going to be substantial amounts of adaptation. But hey, that's interesting as well, because if it was easy, it wouldn't be fun to watch. I'm going to wrap up. Everyone running up the side of the screen, as ever, use our Patreons who massively support this build. Without your help, this wouldn't happen, because I'd be a broke man by now. If you're into helping to that level, patreon.com/toolsandtrack, and get part of this and be on here and support all of that jazz and just generally be awesome. If that's not your bag though, Still, we appreciate the subscribes, the likes, the bells, all of that jazz, because it's the only way we grow. But genuinely, it is actually the only way we grow. You'll have noticed that our subscriber count is going up, and genuinely, it does help the channel. So if you know of anyone who might like this, and you've only just hit subscribe yourself, share the bloody stuff, because nobody seems to do that. And if you do, let me know, and I will give you mad props on the channel for doing so. That's it for now. Because it's Christmas, I'm going to go jingle bells and say, you know, Merry Christmas. And until the next time, thanks for watching, guys. Drive safe.